Right, welcome to Desertification Iron Discs Volume 8, and today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Mardi McBrien. Hi Mardi, how are you?
Hey guys, how are you? I'm well. How about you, Dan?
Great, it's lovely to see you. Lovely to meet you. I can't believe I've not met you before. This is the first time.
Well, it won't be the last, that's for sure.
Won't be the last time, absolutely. So Mardi, do you want for the gang, do you want to give us a bit of an intro to what you currently do? We'll go into the kind of the detail later on, but do you want to tell us a bit about CDSB and the kind of current project that you're working on?
Sure. So I'm the managing director at CDSB. Don't really know what that means on a day-to-day basis. I think it's whatever is coming our way that I have to pick up and process. But CDSB is the Climate Disclosure Standards Board. And we were set up in 2007 at the World Economic Forum as a response to what was at the time sort of an emerging world of greenhouse gas reporting and climate reporting, and lack of regulation and lack of consistency in the market, and actually an international accounting approach that could sort of standardize that globally. So we were set up just to kind of tinker away behind the scenes, put a framework in place and start to build some of that market practice that you actually need and regulators rely on to be able to like put good quality regulation in place. So been tinkering away, started with climate, moved to environment in 2014-15. At the request of the European Union, and then social in January this year.
Wow, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind 2021 so far, right?
I never thought I'd see this. You know, I wrote a letter 10 years ago. I know I've been in my job 10 years. I'm already aging myself before you get to the music. 10 years ago, I wrote a letter to IOSCO saying, you know, you need to take action on sustainability. And, you know, this year and end of last year, really starting to see these sort of big global bodies that have power to move, starting to really shift the dial on sustainability issues. It's fantastic.
It is, and well, big week as well, big announcement to kick the week off as well, wasn't there, with the Sustainability Standards Board with IFRS, and your kind of involvement within that. It's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that is, because for us that was always why we existed. It was to fill the gap until they were ready to, you know, put this on their agenda. And there are lots of accounting issues out there that are, you know, really important too, right? And sustainability is important, but there's lots of other business issues. And, you know, this wasn't quite making their agenda. So we were kind of filling the gap while they couldn't. So this is a huge step forward. And we're really, really, really excited to see them stepping up and so boldly and fast and with pace, right? You know, we don't have 100 years that the accounting standards have taken to get sustainability standards in place. So, you know, the current pace, as long as we can keep that going, I think you know, it's going to be a good end of this year, start of next year as well.
Absolutely, but I think well, from my perspective, having like you worked in this my career and seeing the momentum shift and change, we've all been pushing that boulder up the hill, haven't we? And at the moment, we've got it to the top of the hill. You know, I think it's not quite gone down the other side yet, but. Maybe this is what, you know, sustainability is such a complex subject, right? It's so multifaceted that being able to produce a standard or set of standards around it is a huge task, right? And it involves lots of people. Why do you think it's come together all of a sudden, or is coming together all of a sudden?
I think there's a few reasons. I think the reasons that, you know, standards, frameworks, initiatives, they're all set up to fill gaps, right? And they're not set up to replicate the wheel, or they're not generally set up to that. They're filled to, you know, by really good meaning people, businesses, companies, investors, governments, filling gaps. And I think we're not always good at telling everyone how we fit together when we fill the gap, but I think there's been a broader sort of understanding of how some of these things do knit together. And, you know, and I think that process over a few years of talking about it and coming to understanding that they fit and they work has really started to bear fruit, I think. And you realize where the complementarities are. And I think, you know, most of us are not for profits, right? We're there to fill, you know, to not exist forever. We're there to serve the common public good. Yeah. And so we need to ensure that we actually do that as well. It is part of this whole process. And yeah, it's good, but also things got to do with personalities. It's got to do with, you know, government momentum. It's got, you know, the TCFD, you know, really shone lights on information for capital markets. We saw, you know, there's been quite a few factors, you know, government's really stepping up, the big play for COP26, you know, that's been 2 years of momentum. And I think there's you know, those stars all have to align, don't they? And I think it might have just fallen in.
Do you think TCFD is a big part of that? just like the existence of how that came about and the approach that it took as being instrumental in this.
Yeah, I think it definitely is. I think having a very powerful central banker that was chairing the Financial Stability Board, really, it was a really big part of that. But the fact that they understood this was about resilience, and resilience of business, resilience of the planet, resilience of capital markets to be able to finance that transition we needed, about moving money. So from our perspective at CDSB, we very much welcomed, right? Welcomed the fact that they took our framework as the basis for it too, because we could have been out of business. We could have achieved our mission. I think that was a huge shift in the way people thought about corporate reporting.
That's something you said in the press release though this week was around CDSB, and it wasn't designed to be around forever, right? It has a job to do, has a role to play. Is it nearing that kind of fruition of that role, or is there what's the next evolution of that?
I think there'll have to be some once the Sustainability Standards Board is officially agreed by the IFRS, which hasn't happened yet, and then announced, we will have to stop and have a very good hard look at whether or not CDSB as it exists is needed, and if there are bits of it that's needed, is it still right that we keep CDSB or we give those out to our board members or other partners that could actually be doing that as business as usual?
What does that board mean for organisations or approaches like SASB or GRI?
So SASB are on my board. SASB is sort of merging to the Value Reporting Foundation at the moment. We're creating that with the IRC, and we may go down that route, or may go part of us down that route. Someone like GRI, I like to think of SASB and the IRC as sort of our enterprise value or financially material friends. You can take SASB and CDSB, put them together, and you've almost got the perfect solution for sustainability reporting and mainstream corporate reports. Where I see GRI is sort of beyond the enterprise value creation, basically material for everyone else, and also that central part, but beyond. And they do with lots of very important stakeholder groups and lots of issues that may not yet be financially material, but are material to other people and have concerns. So, if we put all these things together, like I said, they're actually quite a nice ecosystem, quite a nice process, and get it right, fingers crossed, we should be able to see the barriers come down for business, but also be able to use data more too.
And what do you think of like the World Economic Forum approach to this aggregator?
Yeah, so the metrics. So if you think about those metrics, they cut across all sectors. So, I think there is a sort of a layered approach. So I think it does work, and it's good to have some that are common for everyone. And then there'll be sort of, say, the European approach, or the American approach, the Australian approach, where everyone's going to need different ways to hit their targets for 2050, 2030, 2050, right? It's going to be much harder for maybe Australia than the EU to hit those. So they're going to have tighter local ways to be able to, police that, get those sort of met. So what we're looking at bringing together is just a global, a sort of a floor, almost a global floor that can be strengthened at a local level.
And how much have you seen change in like the business attitude towards reporting and transparency kind of in recent times? Have you seen a big shift there? Are companies just wanting to do more, or what the reasons are around that?
I think we're seeing a much more investor pressure, much more market information around this as well. We're definitely seeing an improvement in reporting. We're seeing more reporting. I'm like you're saying, we're not seeing complete reporting by any means. So I think we're still a quiet way from that, even on TCFD or climate, which is kind of like one of the first kind of leading issues. I don't know how often I see a company that says, climate's financially, climate's material, all these challenges, and then you look in the numbers in the back and you're like, so where are you? Like, what are you doing back here? Like, doesn't seem like you put any money aside or written, there's no notes. Like, there's still a really long way to go until you start to see that. And you've seen a little bit from BP. We see a few company examples coming through, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. And then that's truly when you've met TCFD, and that's what we'll see coming out of the UK regulation. That's coming out, that is out for consultation by the time that everyone will hear this. And, that really is about into the strategic report, which will need to be connected to the accounts. It's asking for proportionality, and it's saying do not do standalone TCFD reports. So, I feel like, and you'll probably read this, and you look back now and you'll see, like, I feel my headline is the death of the TCFD report, right? It's truly integrated, and that's what Mark Honey and his team wanted when they set this up, was true integration. This stuff being treated exactly the same as all your other risks.
Absolutely. And what scale of organisation will that apply to? Is it just the big PLCs or the big companies? Or
it says the top 1,600 companies, and so they're public companies, private because they're private as well. They're looking, I think it was 4-7 trillion. It was a big number. Like, I was like, oh, obviously they just show you on a screen because it's the day before launch, and they're like, well, this is coming out tomorrow. Just giving you a heads up.
Yeah, that's incredible.
You're trying to look like this onto the screen to take down as many notes as you can, just so you've got something for a bit of a press release, and encouraging the world to respond to this very important consultation. But it's really exciting. So, first large G20 country to go push mandatory TCFD at real ambition. So, well done, UK.
I know, we're all shocked, weren't we? I love our chest. Yeah, because it gets a bad rap in many ways, but that's actually incredibly progressive. So
it is, yeah.
Is one thing it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this as well. I was LinkedIn. I spent quite a bit of time on just reading around, seeing what people think of stuff, and I saw something that came out from SASB a few weeks ago, where I think it was the chief exec. I'm not sure, like 100%, saying it's better just for you to report, put something out there. That to me didn't feel quite right. What do you make of that? Or is that out of context?
I think it's out of context. I think if it's the CEO of SASB, a bit like me, I'd say just get started, lay out a roadmap and get started. And I think that's the most sensible way to think about this, is think about, the story your business needs to tell, where it wants to be, what are the values, write that out and publish that first, and then work out how to come in behind that. I suspect it was probably taken out of context, but I speak alongside that person often, and we're always saying, just do something, right? Just do something. Put out a roadmap, pick up a framework, read it, think about how that could apply to your business, to your work, to your conversations you're having. And I think that's really important also as we move on this transition towards a potential SSB, because that will be built on existing frameworks and standards in the market.
Yeah. And
so if you're not getting started with any of those, or even considering what they say, if you think that's moving fast and say 2 years, maybe we'll have something come out of them. Global. So how many countries IFRS in? Like 148 or something. The US has said global systems. It could be 149 plus. And then we're looking, and then that'll be quite, next financial year. Year end, like 3-4 years mandatory. Wow. It's still too slow, but wow, that's fast if you think about the pace, the way things move, and the rigor and all the other things that have to go into this, and the governance. Be a lot of busy people.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just the importance of accounting in these things in the same way as we account for the money, right? That's the key. And think of how long those systems have been around to account for money and cash and capital, but that people are only just starting to kind of really understand how multidimensional and complex sustainability data is, especially if you're a big multinational with manufacturing operations globally or some scenario like that.
It's huge. And just think the skills, the skilling up of the existing accounting reporting professional CEOs boards, but right down to sustainability professionals, that have been doing this for perhaps 20 years and now need to work out how to have those conversations up to business. Think about everything from internal controls, how we get this through audit, very different conversations. We've got a lot of people that need a lot of training and a lot of upskilling really, really quick. And I think that comes back to that getting started point, thinking about it now so that the big costs don't come later, and you can sort of, work, you've got time to think and look at what you already have. Because I think a lot of data is already in these businesses. A lot of the thinking's already there, captured for other purposes. And they just kind of need to be knitted together in a way. And I think looking what you've got now is a really and looking at those frameworks, so getting started on that values and map, I think, is a good approach.
Yeah, materiality. Yeah, that broader understanding. I did a panel last week with one of our clients aimed at the kind of US investor market, and it was around that. And one of the other panelists was quite a vocal guy, like a fund manager from the Emirates, and he was talking about education is what you Americans need, kind of thing. It's kind of a bit funny.
I think everyone needs education.
I think he went a little bit. He was a little bit too pointed with his remarks at places. But education is absolutely fundamental here, or an appreciation that this is complex. Like, one of the things I hate hearing, I've heard quite a lot this year, is how can I be ESG compliant? That means nothing, does it?
It means nothing. No.
And investors ask it all the time because they're like, there must be a shortcut to get to, a stamp. No, you fundamentally don't understand sustainability. That's the problem.
Well, I think you want it because it takes you put a lot of resources into your financial reporting, right?
Yeah,
a lot of it. Actually, you should be putting a lot of resources into thinking about ESG or sustainability because it's a large part of the value of your business, the value drivers of your business, and you won't have the other numbers around if you haven't actually taken care of those. So it should take time and it should cost money. And I'm not saying it needs to be proportional, but you shouldn't expect it to be one person.
No, but that's where going back to something like TCFD and looking at it that way around, that, well, if there is climate change, if there is more water stressed areas, what does that mean to my business? Mm-hmm. And then so getting a CFO or a CEO to think in that terms is better than what could our impact be from that product line.
That's right.
And I think that's probably, to me, that's the difference I see, is that them getting confused over that, but they are generally thinking about it more. So we just need that thinking to be done quite quickly. That's the issue.
I agree with you. Much pace is needed.
Yeah. So all right then. So you're reporting guru clearly, and kind of around reporting disclosures and that whole kind of ecosystem that exists. How did you get here? Because when I look at your background and where you came from, I can see like a lot of activism in there, and I can see I love the bachelor's degree, forest science and environmental science.
Mm-hmm. So forester. I started out as a forester.
Yeah, you're a forester. You want to be a lumberjack?
Yeah. I almost put that on my list of songs as a bit of a joke. I get a lot. Started off forestry, and I truly, I guess, I miss it a lot. I miss it a lot. It was a really nice start to a career, walking around forests all day, and growing up in Australia. That's large scale forests, right? You're just walking around stuff like that. But that's sort of as a degree. I got a chainsaw ticket, I got an axe ticket, I sprayed chemicals, we lit fires. You dug big holes in the soil, that kind of sounds. You climb on forest machinery. You have assignments on forest harvesting machinery. Kind of fun, huh? Right?
Yeah.
What it does do for where I am now, and I often reflect back and say, if there was still a forestry degree, because they're all being cut all over the world, if there was still a forestry degree, would I tell my girls to do it? And I absolutely would, because what I learned is, you learn economics, you learn biology, you learn, all that kind of basic maths, chemistry, all that stuff, right? All really handy things. But then you do things like dig big holes in the soil and look at soil profiles. You put roads through things. You get your ecology, your dendrology. You get all that really cool fundamental grounding you need in life just about to do everything. And so, really, I loved my forestry training. However, I never worked full time. I did as my work experience. You had to work experience every year, and I did all sorts of different things, like climbing up stacks of big particle board mills and measuring emissions and walking forests, like I said, and surveying things, or surveying wood chip piles. God forbid you can even say that anymore, going from Tasmania up to Asia, all that kind of stuff. But then I also did some really fun stuff. I worked as a lumberjack in Germany. Really, really, really fun stuff. But then, I graduated, and I was already president of the International Forestry Students Association at the time. And which was, again, a huge amount of fun. But I was the first from sort of the Asia Pacific part of the world, which is quite removed when you spend a lot of time being the youth voice on the UN or on some of the big European forums. So the Australian government actually gave me a grant to move to Europe. Wow. And I never went back.
So you've been here since? Oh.
Have been here ever since. Yeah. So I really enjoyed that. It was great. But that was sort of representing the youth voice, right? Opportunities for young people at a time when having a youth seat at the UN wasn't normal. Getting that for forestry, and actually, quite a male-dominated, at the time, quite old male-dominated industry. It was really a big thing. So I really enjoyed that. But I also enjoyed the other side of the world too. So I really, and just the impact it can have. So I got lost in forestry for quite a few years after that here in London, UK, for the forest industries here. And then I just got frustrated. I was really young. I was in my 20s. And I was really young everywhere I went. And everyone just felt like they were owed an existence. Like, oh, they get subsidies. And I was just like, there's got to be a better way. We need to learn how to fight as a sector, and stand up for ourselves and represent ourselves better, rather than wanting, handouts. Scotland got them. Why haven't we got them in England? Or poor old England. It was just getting a bit frustrating for me. And so I just one day I just thought, right, I've got to try and work out how I can influence. And so I literally just decided, okay, well, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go and find a job where I can learn to influence. I took a big pay cut, just went to a small charity, a campaigning charity, to learn grassroots campaigning, like how you drive change. And it so happened that was for Bill Bryson, the author Bill Bryson, and I ran his then litter campaign. So it wasn't really a little campaign, but it was a really good campaign to learn how to, all the different levers you can pull to try and get public awareness or try and influence and drive change. So from that perspective, it was really helpful. And I had worked with a great group of people that taught me so much. But, obviously, you just keep moving around. And then I went off. I quit that to go on a honeymoon for 12 months because I thought, well, might as well travel the world. Who needs a house? Let's go. I get to travel anyway. Let's go backpacking. So, and then I came back and needed another job. And I looked for advocacy again because I thought, you know what? I like this changing the rules of the game thing. I like someone telling me what a problem is and working out all the different ways you can try and fix it. I'm an environmental person at heart. So I was like, right, what do I do next? And so WWF had an Earth Hour, like a job available. Like, wow, that sounds fun. Switching, and I'd seen a bit the year before where we were traveling about lights going off, but it was the second year. So I thought, well, how hard can it be? It's already going to be set up. You've just got to go and move a few things. It was a short-term contract. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. And so off I went and, switched off the lights on Piccadilly Circus for the 4th or 5th time since World War II. Cool, huh? Standing in Trafalgar Square and watching the lights go off around London around you, thinking, I did that. Cool. Yeah. And, huge amounts of numbers of people took action that night and would have had to have a conversation about doing something differently. That's cool. That felt fun. And but then I had this really foolish moment, Dan, where I thought, I've tried the private sector, I've tried public sector, I've tried the charity movement. I'm quite comfortable with that now, but I haven't been a civil servant. I haven't gone from the inside to change the rules. I've just tried to do it from the outside or working in partnership. I'm going to try going on the inside. I think that was the worst mistake the UK civil service and I could ever make. I was the worst civil servant in the entire world.
I realised why? Why? Because you didn't conform.
I wasn't a good conformist, and I was on carbon market policy straight after the Copenhagen COP, where it didn't go to plan, and everyone had this big anticipation for carbon markets and red and aviation. Everyone had this huge big expectation, and it really quite fell flat. And because I'd been on the outside for too long, I wanted to bring some of the outside in. So, that works over here and that works here. And why don't we look at the characteristics of that and see what works and what doesn't? And we'll build off our thinking from that. Oh, no, we don't like the outside world. And I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right for me. And of course, you're in the civil service, your boss has to approve your promotion or where you move to, right? You can't just apply and get out, move around. So I thought, you know what, it's the only time I've ever got to the end of my probation and gone, I think it might be better for both of us if we just don't continue this any longer. I think it's okay at this point if you and I just call this quits, right? Yeah. And really hard thing to do, to know when you're not in the right job for you or for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so I just jumped out of there, and then I reflected on my life for quite a couple of months. I went home to Australia and sat in the sunshine for the summer out there and thought, goodness, there has to be more to this. Meanwhile, my husband's like, so you're going to get a job? What are we doing? There's bills, there's stuff going on. And, it wasn't quite a failure, but you do have to reflect on these things before you jump back in. And then there was this job advertised, and it said, taking minutes at meetings in a small secretariat of this thing I'd never heard about, managing a few meetings and things like, oh, this sounds, in sustainability, in climate change. I thought, well, this all looks very safe and nice. I was burnt, remember? So, I was like, oh, hang on, let's just see if I can find my way back in. And I went for my interview, and I had 2 interviews. And the first one, they said, so tell me about your greenhouse gas accounting experience. And I don't have any. It never said so on my CV. I don't have any, no. And I thought, I'm not getting a call back. And then I got a call back, and I was like, fed up. And I said, oh, look, I tried to download your report, but I couldn't actually find it anywhere. I'm terribly sorry. I wanted to be more prepared. And I said, oh, it's not anywhere. We haven't put it on a website or anything. It's just like, we've got some printed copies over here. I was like, oh, right, okay. And it turned out that's my job today. So it took them 3 weeks to make a decision. And my first meeting was back at DEC, just coincidentally enough. So just baptism by fire, walks back, first meeting straight into your place you walked out of. But it was this job, and it was to manage the CDSB secretariat. And I was the first full-time employee. And now we're 20, and frameworks and regulation around the world and underpin the TCFDs. So 10 years, and I'd say I'm now a non-financial reporting expert in some way.
Yeah.
And changing the rules of the game, Dan. If we get it right, all those companies in 148, 49 countries in the world will be underpinned by this work. So I guess now I'm almost like writing my CV for the next job, right? Because if I've done this right, at the end of this year, or early next year, I should be unemployed.
Yeah, but then I guess the evolution of all this is probably back to your forestry and the biodiversity disclosures, and by the way we account for nature, right? Which is the kind of the next level, and water resources and all. There's lots more to do, I think, isn't there?
Well, we've been doing a lot of it. So we've got the water part of that we have that comes out. It's already in our framework, but the guidance comes out in autumn. We've just launched a really detailed working group on biodiversity, land use and forests to produce this similar sort of guidance, which will feed in hopefully to that bigger body as well. And it's just because, I get asked, if I get asked any questions, what does it look like? Who else is doing it? Can I look at it? And how do I do it? So we just spend all our time now. It's like, do not develop anything new. I just want us to spend all our time answering those questions and producing more and more things that stop that block of how do I do it? It's like, oh, it's too hard. I can't get started. And thinking about it, not just from those large listed companies, like say the large top 20%, because, they can generally get their stuff together or pay you or pay someone else, right? Yeah. But it's that next sort of 40, 50%, almost like the clay layer in the middle, if you want a nice soil analogy, that don't have those resources, not quite sure where to get started, and actually really need that push if we're going to keep the momentum going and have the impact that reporting should have on the planet, right? Not just on reporting for reporting's sake.
And given that they are that clay layer, they're quite hard to move sometimes, aren't they?
Right, that's the
congealed, compacted. What do your girls think? Like, how motivated are they by environment and sustainability?
So they're one's nearly 4 and one's nearly 6, so quite young. But they turn the lights off to save the polar bears of their own accord. They say we'd like to be like mummy when we grow up. I'm not quite sure they completely understand what mummy when they grow up is like, but they're good little things, and they like this stuff. They wrap up books from their own house of David Attenborough and give them to me and say, "Mummy, here's your favorite thing." And I'll be like, "Oh, look, he's like, just read the book, Mummy. It's much better." Like
those books are brilliant. The ones that feature like the Attenborough and the different figures in history. My daughter, she's 5, Annabelle. She loves those, and she picked out the Attenborough one. But there's all sorts that she's kind of got engaged with, and this is probably, that was the other thing I was going to ask you about, is just the role of women. You kind of touched on it earlier, but the role of women's roles in this agenda in these organisations. How is it? It feels to me, and it's difficult for me to comment given I'm a man, but it does feel to me like there is greater diversity coming through now into some of these more influential positions in organisations, and from an area where it has been very male dominated and a bit traditional and a bit boring as well. So how does it look to you from that perspective, and what can we do to kind of encourage more women coming through into these leadership roles?
I honestly do think we are seeing a lot more, but we all need to support each other and be each other's champions, whether we're male or female or old or young, right? Diversity comes in all shapes and sizes. And I think we all need to champion and be there for each other. I mean, if this last year hasn't told us anything, right? You're only as good as like the weakest sort of link or person around you. And I think and particularly in your teams, right? You want everyone to succeed, because there's so many just brilliant ideas and people out there. And I mean, I think it's great that we're seeing more women. I've always been an advocate for women, whether it be in developing economies or for rural projects, or for, I'm on many boards that deal with that kind of stuff. It's really, really key. But it's lovely, showing up I often show up to meetings where there's more senior women around the table now than men. And I had an event at the London Stock Exchange a couple of years ago, and it just happened that we did have 2 men on the panel, like scheduled to be there. And last minute, for very important personal reasons, both of them had to pull out. It was an all-female panel. And the feedback we got afterwards about being all female was amazing. Yeah. And we were like, whoa, okay, right.
Not deliberate, yeah.
Yeah. I was like really shocked about people commenting on it. And I was like, I was actually a bit worried about it being all one sex. Yeah. And they were like, we loved it. It's great. It's a great change, Mardi. And okay. But I'm all for getting, youth, younger people and older people's opinions at the same table as well. There's a good shift. But yeah, I actually am seeing a lot more women around than men. And I'm actually seeing more women around than I actually am men at the moment. And that's also worrying me too. I think you do need a balance of opinion and approach, and as well.
And I guess that it's probably pretty obvious, but I think our company's come on leaps and bounds since we've had a bit more of an international outlook in our recruitment strategy. So people that you don't have to be from a different country, but people that have put themselves out there, explored, spent time away, learned another language, because that's what we're trying to do here, isn't it? Like unite all these different cultures and ways of thinking. That is ultimately what this is all about. So,
oh my God, that's the best bit of this job.
Yeah.
Like I start, I mean, they're from somewhere different, but everyone comes from a different place. Yeah. Everyone's got a completely different background. And then I guess in some ways that's also what I'm missing at the moment, is the ability just to, what I don't miss is being on a plane every week. What I do miss is connecting and learning from all those different cultures that help me keep growing personally and professionally as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a perfect segue into your music. But where else are you from originally?
So I'm from Melbourne. I grew up in Melbourne. I was in Australia until my early 20s when I moved to London. Okay. And then I married a Londoner. I married a Cockney. So I am very centrally London based.
You become English.
I have.
Right, let's look at music. Because this is the really important part. So I listened to this this morning actually, and I thought, I want to go to a party at your house because these songs are amazing, and they're very, very happy songs as well. Most of them, but again, I will admit I'm so superficial with music. I don't listen to the words. It's all about the music for me, the tone and stuff. So anyway, so your 7 songs, starting, it goes through from the 60s through to the kind of a couple of years ago. First song is the Beatles, Here Comes the Sun. Why did you choose that one?
I grew up around music. I think it's the same as just about everyone on every one of these podcasts. We were lucky enough that our parents grew up, they didn't have as much telly as we had. They didn't have music, right? LPs, everything, vinyl. And I grew up with a dad who had, and still has the most enviable vinyl collection that's ever existed, all bought the day they came out, nice. He's an old guy now, he still tells those stories. And I sort of put a post-it note on the back of the cupboard to say Mardi on it, just in case I don't happen to be in Australia when he's starting to give them away. But amazing collection. And I was spoiled with everything, everything from Rolling Stones, Beach Boys, Beatles, every extreme. And it just was one of those Beatles for one song that still, he'll always have the Beatles on. And this song always just makes me smile. And I think spring's coming on here. The sun's been out the last few days. And when you think Beatles, which Beatles song? It was like the Sgt. Pepper's in this one. And this one's just so much happier for everyone.
It's a lovely song. Beautiful song. And then the next one, this gave me a flashback to my childhood because I was living in Hong Kong in the late 80s. And I remember this song. I didn't know it from its name, but then turns out Midnight Oil, one of Australia's greatest exports, most likely. So Beds Are Burning by Midnight Oil.
Yeah, so it's for all of my dad's car-loving pursuits. He was also liked with his music, a big Australian rock band, and he liked them all. And this was one that he used to make. He used to always say, put the cassette in, go, you guys should be listening to this. You should be listening to this. And, you know, I'm not going to give my age away, but I was about 8 or 9, possibly 10 when this sort of hit the charts. And so you don't really understand the meaning behind it at that age. And it was such a political motivated song, but it was on the radio all the time. And it's one of those things that now, when you think of what I've gone into, you know, being such a politically and socially driven role I have and path I've taken, you know, you think back in that, and then Blue Sky Mine, and, you know, all these ones out of Midnight Oil, you just think, you know, it's there was so many more, but you're thinking, you know what, that was one that I'll never forget. I'll never forget my dad for sort of introducing me into that kind of music.
And it's such a catchy song as well. But not as catchy as the next one.
No,
Karma Chameleon, the Culture Club. Boy George. I love
don't
this.
know if we just all wanted to wear the gloves and have the black eye makeup. I just couldn't, it was just one of those songs. I was in high school and we just sang all the time. And we had no idea of the meaning behind it. I truly think we all just wanted to look like Boy George. And we loved it. And you could just belt it out. And you still can, right? Every time it comes on the radio, you just want to turn it up and belt it out. And a friend recently said to me, she said, oh, do you remember we used to do this? She goes, sometimes I still do it in the shower. I thought, sometimes I still do it in the kitchen, you know. It's one of those things you can just kind of...
I did it this morning, actually, so, yeah.
Could you imagine, like, fishnet gloves back again? That were really, like, you probably didn't wear them, but, like, fingerless fishnet gloves and the big black eye makeup and that kind of, you know, black hanging clothes. I mean, we all did it back then, so it just feels good.
Never been a makeup wearer particularly. I missed out there.
There's still time. You're still young.
Still there. Not that young. And the next one, so John Denver. And why? So there's lots of John Denver songs, but why did you choose "Thank God I'm a Country Boy"?
Well, I studied forestry, and I spent a lot forestry at Melbourne University. So you don't study in the city for that. You do a couple of years in the city of Melbourne, but you move out to a very small forestry school in the country to learn this. To learn forestry, and it's great, but you spend a lot of time surrounded by about 100 local farmers, and this song plays every night in the jukebox. And but it then subsequently got all of us up at every 21st birthday party we went to get on the dance floor. You know, we all had our boots on, we all wore our jeans. You know, I had a shaved head back in those days. There was no hair on this head, and I was like number 2 all over. Don't tell anyone, but yeah, I didn't know what makeup really was at that point. You know, we were really, I worked on a potato farm at university. You know, we were farmers, right? So this really was the life I lived, and you know, it still makes me smile. I mean, you can Take Me Home Country, right? There's so many John Denver songs, but this one was just like, it just such a big part of every night when you sat down with your pot of beer after a hard day's work, and someone would put this on, you start tapping, you start, you know, it's just a good pub song.
It's a good one. But by the way, these are going to be on Spotify and Apple Music, so you've got to listen to them. And it's only 25 minutes long. It's a lovely, punchy, short playlist. I put the live version of the recording of that one from Los Angeles. I thought it was quite
that'd be good.
And the next one, me and my son Henry, who's 3, we were listening to this playlist the other night, and he loves madness, like baggy trousers, all that stuff. But this one is I think it's a beautiful song as well. It Must Be Love. It's so catchy. It's such a lovely song.
Wow, my husband grew up in London in the 80s.
Yeah.
So, and this was baggy trousers or any of the songs that he gives to the concert. They jump around like crazy people every time they all come on the radio. And it was my wedding song. We got married in Australia, and this is the bit of Britain, other than my husband and his family, we took with us. So we made the band learn it, and the kids still love it. We all sing it. Makes us all smile. Who doesn't love this song? Like, it's just lovely.
Really well, composed compared to the madness of a lot of the other ones. It's a really beautiful song. Right. And I love the next one. So I put the one from the Mark Ronson album. So Valerie with Amy Winehouse rather than the Zootongs one. Is that okay? Or is that you?
I actually don't mind who sings it. It's my eldest daughter who's about to turn 6. It's her favourite song. She started it going at my mother-in-law's house. She's got an old CD player, and she must have had it on a CD. She just put it on, and she loved it. She just put it in herself and play it over and over again. And we were at the Bermondsey Street Festival in London, and there was a little like karaoke thing for kids. And she was only 3, and she went over and asked them to play it and stood there on a microphone and sang it. Never forget it. But it just gets, you know, it comes on and like all the kids start singing and belting it out. And yeah, it's just it's just a good song, right? And
the one with Amy Winehouse has got so much attitude as well. Like,
yeah,
just there.
it sort of suits my 5-year-old, really, to be honest.
Yeah, already. They got, yeah, mine's similar. So they've already got that. They're already 13 somehow, even though they're 5.
Attitude. People ask, I say, oh my God, they're a nightmare. They've got so much attitude, so much
Really?
energy. Oh, if you know, Mum, and you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. I get it.
Understand? Yeah, it's not a freak. It's true.
It's hard to look in the mirror.
And then finally, is this another daughter's favourite song, "Shotgun" by George Ezra?
Yeah, I think it's an everyone's favourite song, isn't it? I was in Australia not last Christmas, the Christmas before, and it was sort of the song of the summer. You know, it's a sport, so I love sport. You know, it's a sports song. Get a whole cast singing, you can get a dinner table singing, you can get, you know, all has to do is come on the background, and every at the dinner table you have 5 different families that don't know each other. Everyone's going, Shotgun. You know, everyone's going, woo, you know, like, it's just great. And you know, who doesn't like George Ezra either? Like, it's just, it's so, I mean, anything that gets people singing and smiling and laughing nowadays, I think I'm all for it.
If you don't like George Ezra, you're not coming to our party. That's
right. I mean, you don't have to come, it's optional, but if you don't like him, I wouldn't advise it.
No, yeah. and the final couple of things. I'll let you go with Gadget first, because I'd like to finish on the box set. So yeah, and just bear in mind, in this kind of desertified island scenario, there are knives and things like that. So you know, afford yourself some kind of luxury with your choice if you've got one.
I'm going to take my sun hat then.
Okay.
A big sun hat, because I think if we're on a deserted island, or a deserted-ish island,
yeah,
it's got warmer, right? And I've got fair Australian skin, and I've grown up in the world of like the ozone layer, right? Where you just burn the moment you put your arm out the window. And that wasn't really pleasant when I was a kid growing up. No. And so I think I'd like my sun hat, a big one that can kind of double down as like a winter thing if I needed it, if it got really cold at night.
That's a very practical, pragmatic kind of solution.
Yeah, that's you never, like Australia, it's like you walk outside, just like, you got your hat.
Yeah, they also, Australia go, you're going to get eaten by that spider, you know, like there's always something that's going to kill you. Pieces.
I've got this far, right? I've but cancer will kill you too, right? You're more chance of probably dying of skin cancer than you are of a spider bite in Australia.
Yeah, so
go with your hat. I think hat's safe.
Yeah, it's got to be at least that.
Yeah, oh yeah, a big one. Like just think like Ascot races. Like we're talking big hats here. It's no fascinator. Like really big, proper, not quite corks. Leave the corks off. I'm not cork girl, but the big hat.
Those corks, yeah. This is like Crocodile Dundee all over again, isn't it? Yeah. Love that film. And then the box set. Now, I'm, you know, I love films, I love movies, I love TV, anything kind of stimulating. I've never been able to get on with this program. What is it about Gilmore Girls that you like?
You know what? Okay, one, there's a lot of them and they go for a long time, right? There's like 7 series, 45, 50 minutes each, 150 minutes. It's like a high energy, like ups and down, sort of empowered women fighting, battling for like a, you know, for true life, proper just life, right? I don't seem to remember what happens from like one series to the next, so it kind of feels like it's always new. So if I had to watch them, you know, one a day for 153 days, I probably, by the time I got to the next time round, probably wouldn't remember what happened first time round. You know, it's just an ups and downs, female lead, but you know, I don't actually watch a lot of talent. I said to my husband, what box sets have I ever watched? He goes, you watch loads. I'm like, but what? And I was like, oh, Sopranos, that was a long time ago. And then he was like, what else is there? I was like, well, I think I did Friday Night Lights, and I've just done Schitt's Creek because everyone's done that in lockdown, right? So it was like, I don't really, and none of them went for long enough.
That is, yeah, the ultimate one that I think I've worked out mathematically on duration basis is 24. Because there's lots of those seasons and 24 in each and nearly an hour each one. But that's, when do you get time now to go, I know I'm going to watch like 6 seasons of 24. Like that's going to take me till 2023.
Well, I'm completely with you. Like, this whole, I mean, that's what COVID's been good for. I've actually like had an idea about, I've been to watch television. I've been home to watch.
Yeah, it's true.
Television. Like a box set would have been, I think we also might have watched this year, which we watched Modern Family. There's a lot of those, but they're only 20 minutes long. So
that's easy.
It doesn't,
it doesn't really stack up.
And being up girls myself, I think it's an ups and down kind of life, and it's just got lots of energy. I drink a lot of coffee. I can kind of relate to some of it.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Oh, well, Mardi, look, would you believe it? We've been talking for about 50 minutes. So
no, I wouldn't.
We have. And these are usually about 40 minutes long, so we've done pretty well, I'd say. But just want to say, like, as a departure kind of bit of wisdom, what we like, the whole point of these recordings from our perspective is to find a different way to engage our audience, our kind of subscribers and so on, around sustainability and learn from people that do know about this in a slightly different way. So what one tip would you give to somebody that's thinking about like living a more sustainable lifestyle?
I think a bit like we said about reporting, just pick one thing and start. Just pick one thing that you can do easily fast, and then build out from there. Then think about the next thing you can do that's achievable, and then the next thing, and slightly extend yourself each time. And I think don't take it all on at once. We all go on a diet, then start eating well and running and reading and doing everything in the same week. We tend to fail. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just pick one thing and get started and keep going. It's all right to fail every now and again, but just having the intent and starting trying, and also talk to people about issues. Talk about things, because the more and more you talk to people about things, the more and more this message spreads and grows, and the more and more we can all help each other.
Absolutely. I think wise words, perfect words. And so we'll conclude there. Thanks, Mardi. So the podcast will be on Apple and Spotify, as well as the playlist as well. Make sure you have a good listen to them. And we'll just say thanks again, Mardi. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully see you again soon.
Yeah, I hope for a join soon, Dan.
Absolutely. That'd be great. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.